while America celebrates, enjoying the traditions of our major national holidays, two very distinct terror groups, one driven by radical global Islamism and the other by far-left anti-government zeal, are treating those celebrations not as days of rest, but as target practice. Okay, so let's unpack this a little bit.
Yeah.
We have a serious stack of sources, FBI reports, DOJ press releases, and specialized national security assessments detailing a really jarring reality. The holiday season is now, it seems, an open window for extremist violence, both foreign and domestic, trying to exploit the soft targets of public life.
Right.
So this deep dive focuses on the convergence of two massive and really distinct threats that law enforcement successfully neutralized just before the 2026 New Year period. And we really need to ask, why is the perimeter of our domestic security so fragile right now?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the urgency of these threats becomes terrifyingly clear. We can't forget that 2025 started tragically with a successful attack.
That's the benchmark, right, for what happens when we fail.
Yeah. Exactly. The New Orleans New Year's Day attack in 2025 resulted in 14 fatalities.
14.
The perpetrator, Shamsud-Din Jabbar, was inspired by ISIS and died only after exchanging gunfire with police following his vehicular attack on a crowded Bourbon Street. That rampage proved this threat is real, it's persistent, and, it's successful when vigilance lapses.
And it sets a precedent.
It does. And what really stands out about the 2026 plots is how close we came to replicating that carnage, possibly twice over. It suggests an escalating confidence among these extremist elements.
So they're learning from past events.
It seems so. Law enforcement worked overtime to stop two major plots targeting soft American targets, proving that, as one official noted, all of the lights are still blinking red. The threat is just. It's pervasive.
That context is vital, especially when we talk about the security of the American homeland. I mean, this is not some abstract problem confined to foreign shores anymore.
Not at all.
Let's dive into the first successful disruption, the one inspired by the foreign terror group, ISIS. This involved Christian Sturtevant, an 18-year-old right here in North Carolina.
Yeah.
And this wasn't some complex conspiracy. It was a deeply isolated, purely digital radicalization. So what was his specific, deadly mission?
His mission was calculated, simple, and terrifyingly accessible. Sturtevant allegedly planned a mass casualty attack on soft targets, a grocery store and a fast food restaurant in Mint Hill, North Carolina.
Just everyday places.
Everyday places. His ideology was pure, hateful jihad driven by global rhetoric against the West.
And when you look at his actual planning, it demonstrates a complete adoption of the ISIS playbook, doesn't it?
Oh, completely.
He didn't have access to sophisticated weapons, so he chose the most brutal alternative.
Exactly. His handwritten plan, which was chillingly titled New Year's Attack 2026, set an internal goal of stabbing and striking, I believe, 20 to 21 civilians.
And the targets were specific.
Very specific and very hate-driven. His online posts explicitly cursed cross worshippers and detailed his intention to target Jews, Christians, and LGBTQ+ individuals based on their identity and faith. I mean, this wasn't generalized anger.
No.
It was targeted religious and political cleansing, directed by a foreign terror group's guiding principles.
And his ultimate goal wasn't just murder. It was something else, this perverse form of self-destruction and validation.
Right, and that's the critical element here, the psychological warfare component. His goal was not self-preservation, but martyrdom. He explicitly planned to attack police officers responding to the scene.
So he would be killed by them.
Though he would be killed by law enforcement, he was actively seeking that confrontation with American authorities to fulfill what he saw as a spiritual duty. It makes the responding officers part of his terror objective.
The choice of weapons also highlights the low barrier to entry for this kind of terror, which is something we really have to confront. How did this highly motivated, radicalized teenager intend to execute a mass attack?
Well, he planned to use weapons available in any American kitchen or, a garage. Knives and hammers.
Simple tools.
Very simple. Law enforcement successfully seized 2 butcher knives and 2 hammers, one blue, one wood-handled, which were hidden under his bed.
And that choice wasn't random, was it?
Not at all. It wasn't arbitrary or accidental. It perfectly mirrored guidance found in a 2016 ISIS propaganda magazine article. That article specifically promoted simple, easily acquired weapons for high-impact terror attacks in Western countries. It shows a direct line.
A direct line from foreign propaganda to domestic action. So he essentially recorded a formal employment contract for terror. He pledged bayat, or loyalty, to a group thousands of miles away.
Hmm.
The FBI found Sturtevant was radicalized completely online through ISIS websites and social media. What does that tell us about the barrier of entry for becoming a terrorist in 2026? It seems frighteningly low.
It tells us the physical borders mean very little when the ideological borders are completely porous. He sent a voice recording pledging bayat to an undercover operative.
Unbelievable.
This is a clear case of an American teenager becoming an active enemy combatant, not through physical travel or meetings, but solely via the internet. It speaks volumes about the penetration of these foreign anti-American ideologies right onto U.S. soil.
And right into the minds of isolated youth.
Precisely.
Okay, so that's one axis of threat, the global religious jihad infiltrating the domestic sphere. But the danger to national stability also comes from within. Let's pivot to the opposite end of the political spectrum. We saw a massive domestic plot in California.
Right.
Let's look at the Turtle Island Liberation Front, or 2ELF. This was not about religious extremism, right? This was pure domestic, far-left, anti-government extremism.
Correct. We move from foreign-inspired religious hatred to a purely domestic political hatred. The TILF is a far-left, anti-capitalist, and anti-government group driven by these narratives of decolonization and class warfare.
And they're trying to delegitimize the American founding principles entirely.
That's the goal. Their core belief, which they shared in public manifestos and encrypted chats, is that direct action is the only way. They explicitly reject peaceful protest.
They see it as complicity.
As complicity, yeah. And instead, they demand the complete destruction of the United States and Israel. When anti-colonial rhetoric was shared among members, the responses weren't nuanced. They were open, explicit calls to burn it all down.
So this moves way beyond protest into outright revolutionary violence. And what stands out to me is the scale of their intent.
The scale, yes.
Unlike Sturtevant, who used primitive weapons, this group accepted and planned for the use of weapons of mass destruction, specifically sophisticated explosives on American soil. So what did their operational plan, Operation Midnight Sun, actually involve?
It was a very sophisticated bombing plot drafted by a core group member, Audrey Carroll. Their targets were calculated to cause maximum economic disruption and symbolic damage.
So things like
U.S. businesses, technology, infrastructure, logistics companies. Their stated goal was to completely pulverize symbols of capitalism and colonialism. 4 members, Carroll, Page, Anthony Gaffield, and Lai, were eventually charged with serious terrorism felonies.
including conspiracy to use a weapon of mass destruction.
Including that, yes.
Their operational tactics demonstrate a calculated intent to maximize chaos and minimize law enforcement response time.
Absolutely. They chose New Year's Eve not just for its symbolism, but for a critical tactical reason. They believed the constant sound of fireworks would mask the sound of their multiple explosions.
It's tactical cover.
Perfect tactical cover.
Yeah.
To help them evade immediate detection as they launched subsequent attacks, I mean, they were thinking like military strategists, not disorganized activists.
And their violence wasn't just directed at property. Their plans explicitly targeted federal personnel after the bombings.
And this is where their anti-government ideology really manifests as an intent to wage war against the state. Their post-bombing plans included targeting U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, agents and their vehicles with pipe bombs too. And this is a quote, "Take some of them out and scare the rest of them."
So targeted assassinations of law enforcement.
A clear escalation, yes.
Fortunately, law enforcement intervened before they could inflict damage, and they relied on the crucial work of informants.
Right. Agents who were alerted by an informant arrested the 4 members in the Mojave Desert before they could construct functional devices. And the evidence seized was damning.
What'd they find?
Critical bomb-making materials. PVC pipe in various diameters, potassium nitrate, charcoal, sulfur powder, a respirator. I mean, all the components that could be readily assembled into IEDs and Molotov cocktails. They were weeks, maybe less, from potential deployment.
And the evidence didn't stop there, did it? They found a stolen taser from the U.S. Federal Protective Service in one of the homes.
Yes, which further ties them to previous anti-government actions and demonstrates an active campaign to procure weapons for conflict.
It's proof that this domestic radicalism is organized, it's funded, and it's actively preparing for a confrontation with the government and its people.
No doubt.
So, okay, we have 2 completely different groups. One driven by global religious jihad, one by domestic anti-capitalist zeal. But their methods, once they're operationalized, sound frighteningly similar. What does this convergence mean for our national security?
Well, the critical link is the method, not the motive. Despite having opposing ideological aims, I mean, they're literally on opposite sides of the political spectrum, these groups share one dangerous, immediate goal:
Which is?
the violent disruption of public life during highly symbolic American events. Whether it's the ISIS-inspired teen or the far-left Till cell, they both bypass traditional political engagement, and they use digital platforms to accelerate radicalization in isolation.
That digital isolation really is the key mechanism. Sturtevant was fueled by ISIS websites, and TILF used their encrypted signal group, Order of the Black Lotus, to plan their attacks.
Exactly. And the lesson here, I think, for every American citizen is the profound fragility of public safety today. The ideological banners may be different, but the intent is identical. Extremists seek out soft targets and massive visibility during American holidays to prove the vulnerability of the system and, force societal change through blood.
And this wasn't just a two-pronged threat. We should also acknowledge the third near incident, which speaks to a more generalized ambient threat level.
Exactly. The Seattle near miss. A 21-year-old man wearing a red war hat was arrested near the Space Needle on New Year's Eve.
And he was armed.
Heavily armed, with a shotgun, a pistol, and multiple rounds of ammunition, facing the large crowd gathering for the fireworks. Now, he had a carry permit for the pistol, but his actions, his positioning, his attire, it all suggested an extremely high degree of volatility.
Justifying the intervention.
Absolutely, by the vigilant officers on the scene.
So the outcome of these two major investigations, the successful neutralization of both plots, clearly shows successful intelligence work and, frankly, heroic vigilance by our law enforcement. But the context in which they are working is what's concerning.
And if we look closely at the source material, the threat is persistent and it's escalating. The House Homeland Security Committee explicitly noted that foreign terrorist organizations and jihadist networks are, quote, emboldened by the national security blunders of the past 4 years.
So there's a direct link.
It underscores that the fight to secure U.S. soil is an ongoing crisis. This isn't just a commentary on foreign policy. It's an assessment that a weak external defense and, poor signaling have created a more hostile environment here domestically.
So those high-level policy blunders create a vacuum of perceived weakness that groups like ISIS then rush into, accelerating their online radicalization efforts aimed directly at American youth.
Precisely. The policy failures on the global stage have a direct correlation to the risk faced by citizens at home. When the posture of the nation is perceived as weak or uncertain, both foreign-inspired actors and domestic anti-government extremists feel emboldened to press their advantage.
And law enforcement are on the front lines of that.
Law enforcement on the ground are currently the thin, dedicated line protecting our public gatherings from these individuals.
Mm-hmm.
But they are doing so within a system that, according to these sources, has been fundamentally weakened by flawed security policies.
So we've been forced into this reactionary posture, constantly defending against escalating threats that maybe should have been neutralized earlier.
Or deterred by a stronger national security stance.
Yeah.
This is why the details matter. We have to see these plots not as isolated crimes, but as organized attacks on the very fabric of national stability.
Right.
Whether it's an 18-year-old using kitchen knives to target Christians in North Carolina, or a cell planning to use weapons of mass destruction to pulverize capitalism in California, the threat is an explicit declaration of war against the American way of life.
And the vigilance required to prevent these types of attacks from happening every year is just. It's immense. It involves infiltration, digital monitoring, extreme professional risk for the men and women in the FBI and state police.
And that vigilance is what saved us this past New Year's. But this raises an important question for you, the listener, to consider. We often focus on the profound differences between the ideologies, religious versus political, left versus right.
Sure.
But given that both groups converge on one common tactic, mass violence against non-combatant civilians to force societal change, should we view all acts of mass violence, regardless of the ideological label, simply as different operating systems running the exact same destructive software aimed at bringing down the republic?
It's a terrifying convergence to consider, especially when you think about the 14 lives lost in New Orleans that remind us what happens when that defense fails. That's something for you to mull over as you process the material and evaluate the persistent threat to our domestic security. That's our deep dive for today.